just how far above everybody else is the SEC in terms of getting teams ranked in the top 25? Golden Blue Dude here with you again. Go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. You won't be sorry. And yes, on this video, I have decided to talk about those silly old rankings that mean nothing. But we still like them because it gives us a gauge as to what, the people that matter think about our team. To give us an idea of just how far ahead the ACC is from everybody else in terms of getting teams ranked in the top 25. And it's actually a little bit closer than I anticipated. Now, the gap between the SEC and, say, the ACC is pretty significant. The ACC is extremely top-heavy. So, the first thing I wanted to talk about is the non-Power Fives, the AAC. They got Cincinnati and UCF in. And I think that conference is on the rise. I think Memphis should have gotten ranked in the top 25, and Navy for that matter. But with the news of Memphis running back Kenneth Gainwell opting out, I would have probably changed my mind on that because he was responsible for a lot of their offensive yardage last year. He was the only running back in the nation that had over 1,000 yards rushing and over 500 yards receiving. He had 1,459 yards rushing and 610 yards of receiving and 16 touchdowns. That is a big blow to Memphis. So, yeah, not a top 25 team. So, the next conference I'm going to look at is a conference that's not playing. But for the sake of argument, they are in the top 25. So, let's talk about them. The Pac-12. The Pac-12 is a star that is dying, that is falling into a black hole. They're not doing very well financially, and they haven't been to the playoffs in several years. They have 3 teams in the top 25. Oregon, number 9, it was their best chance of getting to the playoffs in the national championship. And I think they had a great chance, even with Justin Herbert departing. They're building a solid team, and it's such a shame that we do not get to see Oregon versus Ohio State because neither conference is playing. That would have been awesome. That was my number 1 game of the year before they both quit. Then we have USC, ranked number 17. Slavis, their quarterback, he is on the rise. And the Pac-12 needs USC to be good. So maybe this is a good sign for the Pac-12. Maybe USC is going to climb back up into national relevancy. Only time will tell. They don't get to play this year. Well, except for the spring thing. We don't even know what that's going to look like. But anyways, I'm looking towards next year. And then Utah. Utah has had its chances to get into the playoffs. Last year they had a chance, but they couldn't get it done against Oregon. Utah's not good under pressure for whatever reason. And they had a great defense last year. They just couldn't score enough points. So I think Utah is going to be on the downswing and trying to build their way back up because they're not one of those teams that can cycle in and out year after year. I think, they climb to a peak and then they go back down into a valley and have to build back up. So I think Utah is going to be low for the next probably 2 years and build back up. Then the next conference, I want to talk about the Big 12. People tend to forget that the Big 12 only has 10 teams. And they have 4 teams in the top 25. That's almost half your league. I know in terms of sheer numbers, 4 is not a lot. But as far as percentage and ratios, 4 out of 10 is not bad. We have Oklahoma at number 5. Texas at number 14. The Big 12, and I hate to say this because I always throw the horns down, but the Big 12 does need Texas to be successful. I think barring Oklahoma going undefeated, I think Texas would be the Big 12's only hope because I don't think the playoff committee trusts Oklahoma anymore. They've been to the playoffs 4 times and they've lost in the playoffs 4 times. Not 1 win. So Oklahoma needs to go undefeated to get in the playoffs. Then Oklahoma State 15. Great offensive power. Inexperienced offensive line though. Only 1 returning. And then the defense is average at best under Mike Gundy usually. And then Iowa State. Iowa State has the potential which Oklahoma State's ranked 15th, and Iowa State is ranked 23rd. I actually think those should be flip-flopped. I think Iowa State's a better team than Oklahoma State. As long as they figure out how to use Brock Purdy. If they can figure that one out, I'm telling you, Iowa State could get to the playoffs. They are my sleeper team for this year. Last year was Utah, and they came within one game. This year, it's Iowa State. Next, I'm going to talk about the Big Ten. Now, the Big Ten has 6 in the top 25, and the SEC has 7 in the top 25. So there's not much gap there. So for the Big Ten, Ohio State is their top dog, coming in at number 2, and I definitely 100% think that Ohio State would have gotten into the playoffs. It is a daggum shame that they don't get to play because they definitely had a national championship caliber team. Next is Penn State. Look, once Parsons opted out, my faith in Penn State went down. When he was in the mix, I thought Penn State had a chance to upset Ohio State, especially at home. But once he opted out, a little bit shaky. But they're number 7. I don't think they're a top 10 team without Parsons, but I would still put them in the top 15. Wisconsin at number 12. Wisconsin is a solid team. They're not explosive. They're not, they don't get the oohs and ahs and the wow factor, but they do get it done. Last year they got upset by Illinois. That was ridiculous. But then they laid the smackdown on Michigan, and I called that game, by the way. So Wisconsin's dependable, but will they get to the next level? I don't know. They need to recruit more explosive wide receivers to get to that next level. The next is number 16, Michigan. I don't know. I don't even know what to say. I mean, Jim Harbaugh wins 9 games, sometimes 10, but he can't beat Ohio State, and he can't win the Big Ten. He can't get to the playoffs. So, I mean, if that's good enough for Michigan fans, okay, there you go. Good for you. But, for me, I don't think he's up to Michigan standards. But seeing where they've come from, maybe they give him a year or 2 more. I don't know. We'll see. Then Minnesota ranked number 19. Look, last year Minnesota had a magical year. Magical. But they lost a lot of their weapons. So 19, I don't think they're a top 25 team this year. I don't think they're going to be hurting that much from the Big Ten not playing. So, sorry Minnesota. I couldn't warrant that number 19 ranking that they gave you. Then Iowa at 24. I think Iowa is on the rise, but they're one of those teams that are unpredictable. They're super awesome at home. I mean, they are amazing at home. But for some reason, they can't win consistently on the road. And until they figure that out, they're not going to be a top 15, a top 10 team. But if they do figure it out, then they could contend with Wisconsin for the other side of the Big Ten and possibly get to the Big Ten championship to play Ohio State. Of course, that's not going to happen this year because of, the Big Ten not playing, but in the future. And then there's the ACC. The ACC is very top-heavy, and, if they hadn't have pulled in Notre Dame, then the ACC only has 2 teams in the top 25, Clemson and North Carolina, which Virginia Tech's in the coaches poll top 25, but not the AP, and I agree with the AP. Virginia Tech, not a top 25 team. So Clemson, number 1. They are the big dogs. They prove it year in, year out. One of the best recruiting classes every stinking year. They get to the playoffs every stinking year. They win the national championship every other year. So Clemson, number 1, is definitely 100% right. Notre Dame at number 10. Ian Book still has to prove it to me because he still hasn't shown that he's got that killer mentality where you got to put that foot on the throat and, end anybody's chances of coming back in a ball game. And he just doesn't have that yet. Until he gets that mentality, then Notre Dame, they might be a top 10 team, but they're not going to be in the upper echelon getting into the playoffs. But we'll see this year because Clemson and Notre Dame, they're going to play in South Bend. Then we have North Carolina. North Carolina is getting a lot of hype. And there's good reason. Number 1, Sam Howell. Great quarterback. Awesome. And this is only his 2nd year in college football. But another thing that people don't realize is North Carolina had the 2nd best defense in terms of taking the ball away last year in the ACC. And that is an overlooked statistic that people tend to overlook. Taking the ball away is important. You're giving more possessions to your offense. I know stops, not allowing rushing yards, not allowing passing yards, that's important too. But I think takeaways is the number one thing because you're taking a possession away from the other offense and you're giving your offense an extra possession. The more possessions you have to score, the more points you will score. So, yeah, North Carolina 18. I think they'll be in a top 10 team and possibly get into the playoffs, benefiting from the Pac-12 and the Big Ten opting out. And then the SEC, like I mentioned before, 7 teams in, beginning with Alabama, number 3. And Nick Saban proves year in and year out, even when he has a down year, the next year he's coming back and will probably win the national championship. He has the talent. He has the coaching. He has Alabama. Alabama will be in the playoffs. And then Georgia. Georgia at number 4. I think they have a playoff team, but the problem is their scheduling. They get Auburn, Alabama, and Florida. I just see Georgia losing 2 out of 3 out of that. I hope they prove me wrong and get to the playoffs because I'm really anticipating Georgia taking the next step and winning a national championship. I think they will win one under Kirby Smart, but that schedule did not do them any favors, so I don't think that Georgia makes the playoffs. LSU, number 6, and of course losing Joe Burrow. Now they lose Jamar Chase. He was their best offensive player left that was coming back. He's out, so no, I don't think LSU is a top 10 team. I think they're a top 20 team, maybe a top 15 team, but definitely not a top 10. And then Florida, number 8. Do I think they're a top 10 team? Maybe. But really what it comes down to is their schedule greatly benefits them. Now, really, the toughest game they play is Georgia. LSU, all of a sudden, isn't that tough of a game. So I think Florida will only have one loss, go to the SEC championship, and not even be the best team in the SEC East. Because Georgia will end up with 2 losses, Florida with 1, but that 1 loss will be to Georgia. And even though Georgia's the better team, Florida will get to go because they have less losses. Sorry, Georgia. Auburn, number 11. Bo Nix, if he can stabilize, he's going to be a great quarterback because we've seen him shine, but then he has those valleys. If he can avoid the valleys, be more consistent, Auburn has the defense to back him up. So Auburn at number 11 makes sense to me. And I think Auburn has a chance to make the playoffs over the SEC East. I think the East will miss it because Florida will get beat in the title game. Georgia will miss it with 2 losses. I think Auburn only has 1 loss to Alabama. They won't go to the championship, but they'll get in because of that 1 loss. And Alabama will get in undefeated. And after that is Texas A&M. I don't think Texas A&M is a top 15 team. They're ranked number 13. Top 25, possibly. Kellen Mond, he's a decent quarterback, but he's not to the next level yet. All I have to say to Texas A&M is prove it to me because it seems like this happens every year that they get ranked in the upper teens in the top 25 and they just kind of fall off. So just prove me wrong, okay? Texas at 25, I can buy that. I actually think that's a little low for, not Texas, no, Tennessee. Tennessee at number 25, I can buy that. They are recruiting at a very high level, and I think those recruiting classes are about to pay off. I think Tennessee is a top 20 team. I don't think they're a top 10 team yet. I think they'll get beat by Tennessee and Georgia, but they're a solid number 3 in the SEC East, and I think they'll beat Kentucky to end that tiebreaker for 3rd place. I think Kentucky will finish 4th place, but I'm good with Tennessee at 25. But they do need to redo the rankings, get rid of the Pac-12, get rid of the Big Ten, and let's redo these rankings and see what they really look like. That's all I got for you for this video. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next video.